It's getting harder and harder to describe what my job is. On one hand, I'm obviously a creator and an influencer. I mean, you're watching this video, right? On the other hand, I do a lot of software dev. I spend a ton of my time coding as much as I reasonably can. But also, I run a company, a startup. I know I've touched on my journey on how I got into startups here and there, but I don't feel like I've ever properly broken down how I went from college to working at Twitch for 5 years to running a company of my own. And also, of course, what that journey of running the company has been like too. There's a lot to share here. My journey's been very chaotic, and I need to be honest with you guys. I never thought I would be an influencer, much less a CEO, and the order that these things happened in might also surprise you. There's a lot to dive into here. I hope this is useful for you as an engineer, whether or not you're interested in doing a startup, or maybe you already are. The goal is to just show how I got here so that you can make your own good decisions too, and maybe learn something along the way. Super excited to dive into my chaotic journey, but as always, the bills need to be paid, so quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll dive right in. Can I talk about auth for a second? You know, the thing that everybody says is easy, but isn't. You would imagine that really big companies are rolling their own, right? You know, like the Snowflakes, the Cartas, the Vercels, the Cursors, and the OpenAIs of the world. What if I told you all of those companies were using the same auth solution, and that they weren't rolling it themselves, that they actually picked a vendor that makes a lot of sense for real businesses, both big and small? And what if I told you your first million users were free? You'd probably think I'm going nuts, and I understand, because when I look at this page on the WorkOS site, I kind of feel like I'm going nuts. Do you see how many real businesses are using these guys already? It's kind of nuts, and it makes me question why I pick other options as often as I do, because I need a lot of the stuff that WorkOS offers me. They're truly enterprise-ready auth, like all of the things you need, from the compliance side to the portal that you send to a random IT person to get the thing set up, to the integrations with your existing infrastructure, to the backend safety, all these things that are not fun to do, they have done for you. They do the boring part so you can get back to work, and I can't ask for anything more of any provider that I work with. From being honest with you guys, I screwed up not using them for T3 chat. We've had a lot of companies interested in doing business plans and enterprise deals that we just aren't equipped to do because that layer isn't set up properly. You bet your butts we're going to be moving to WorkOS as soon as we have the spare cycles to do it. Don't make the same mistake I did. Check them out today at soydev.link/WorkOS. When I was fresh out of college, I was not very good. I was a practical engineer where I built stuff, but at the same time, I just didn't deeply understand or really care to understand how to build good software. I just made solutions to problems. My background in software was making plugins for Minecraft servers and helping make a lot of the bucket stuff happen earlier on when I was getting into Minecraft. I never thought I would be an engineer. I wanted to work with computers, I knew that, but also I wanted to ride my skateboard and do music too. But the computer stuff took off quick. I decided to go to college for it. Got decent enough at Java by watching New Boston tutorials. In the end, I went to college. I got my music degree and my CS degree, but I didn't have much to show for myself. I had one internship that I kind of bombed. Partially my fault, partially not, I would argue, because my mentor, the person who was assigned to manage me, took a 2-month vacation for the first 2 of the 3 months of my internship, so he just wasn't there. And according to the other interns who were in my general area, they would have left if they were on that team because they were yelling at each other constantly, even harassing me as the intern that didn't know what was going on. I was given a 5400 RPM hard drive on a crappy $200 laptop, even though it was like an Amazon internship where I was being paid a lot of money. Just all these little things went wrong with that internship, and I almost went mad. As such, not a good source of referrals. But at the end of that summer, I did have one thing, which was my Chrome extension, Chrometana. The goal of Chrometana was to redirect Bing to a better place, because with Windows 10 shipping, Bing was now deeply integrated into Windows, and it was quite annoying. So I made it so you could redirect Bing searches elsewhere, and Microsoft responded by making it so you can only open up Edge with the search bar at the bottom. Long story, don't need to go too deep into it, but that was my main claim to fame. It was that and a bunch of different watch faces for the Pebble watches. Nothing super relevant. I got this gig because of a couple people at Twitch specifically that had surprisingly high faith in me. I'll name drop them. I don't see any harm in that. Thank you, Bill and Wava. Bill was one of the first hires at Twitch. He helped build the original chat implementation in Perl. Absolute lunatic. Loved Bill so much. He was the first person that I talked to during my interview loop, and I didn't realize he was the exec for the org that I was interviewing for, because he was just like a chill, fun dude, didn't ask me any technical questions, just wanted to chat. And our conversation ended up going deep into our favorite and, more importantly, our least favorite Daft Punk music. And he has very good taste in Daft Punk. Learned afterwards that I was so young that I was literally born around the same time that Homework came out by Daft Punk, which is both of our favorite. So he was very impressed that I could go all the way back, even though he was in college at that time and I was not born in that time. We also both hate random access memories. That's a long rant for another day. I promise there's a reason I'm going into my history with Bill and Waba. These people have been very helpful throughout. Waba was the engineering manager on this team. He was one of the most important assholes in my life. I owe him so much for cracking the whip and making me into the engineer I am today, for functional program pilling me really early in my career, for helping me fall in love with the beautiful language that is Elixir. Waba helped shape the engineer I am today, and I owe him forever for it. But when I would tell people that Waba was my manager, they would look and say, they let him manage people? Oh my God, I'm sorry. I was so thankful to have him as my manager. I learned so much from him, but he hated being a manager. So after he managed me and one other person for a year, he moved back to IC, hopped around a few times. Now he's at OpenAI, if I recall. He has never managed since because he hates managing, but I was lucky enough to be one of the 2 people he was ever the official manager for. Learned a ton from him. I bombed my interview though. The only reason I got in is because Bill really liked me and Waba had a weird amount of faith in me. These 2 decided that even if they couldn't justify a full-time offer, they could give me a 3-month contract to prove myself. And if I succeeded, I'd get the full-time offer. I hadn't succeeded after the 3 months, so I got another 3-month contract extension. And by that point, I really had locked in, got my shit together, and started contributing meaningfully, and finally got that full-time offer. Huge shout out to both of them for extending the very generous offer that I was not ready for when I applied and letting this all happen. My time on this team was interesting, both because I got to learn a bunch, I got to build a bunch. I wrote the code that ran the Bob Ross marathon, the Power Rangers marathon, all the marathon content on Twitch. I helped start Clips TV, which kind of over time became the Clips TikTok product, which eventually became the new feed. I'm sorry, I warned them against it. All of this was done under the creative team, which was also the non-gaming team. Around when I joined, Twitch was still very much a gaming platform, to the point where if you were doing things other than gaming, you would be banned for it. If you were to dance between games of League of Legends, your partner manager would hit you up and say, hey, you have to stop doing that because we're not a dancing platform, we're a gaming platform. As I had mentioned before, Bill, specifically, was not a gamer. Bill was questioning why he was still at Twitch after all of his time there, and he convinced his good friend, who was the CEO of Twitch, Emmett, to let him invest in a non-gaming side of Twitch. It was the music side, it was the IRL side, it was the fitness side, the art side, painting, and all of that. He also landed the contract with the owners of the Bob Ross IP so we could do the Bob Ross marathon, which absolutely blew up the creative side of Twitch. Until then, people didn't even know there was non-gaming stuff on Twitch. Now there's a whole deep scene within the music world, within the art world, within the IRL stuff, and a lot more too. Shout out to my homie Skirt, who's one of the earliest and hardest working people in the music world on Twitch. Always good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. And I was super lucky to be on this team for a bunch of reasons. I'm going to do one more weird tangent about this, and then we'll blast through the rest. I had to thank a person that I'm very lucky to call a friend, John Wayne. Since the creative team was the team in charge of all non-gaming at Twitch, my role was mostly the engineering side, helping write the code for the creative specific stuff. We were exploring making our own OBS clone for Mac users doing art stuff, but mostly my job became the premium content side, the marathon stuff. That said, my team was 2 engineers, Waba, my eng manager, and then 7 partnerships people. None of the partnerships people knew much about music, and in particular, none of them knew anything about hip hop. John Wayne is both deep in the gaming world and in the hip hop world, both as a producer and as a rapper. He was one of my childhood heroes, one of my favorite musicians of all time. You don't believe me? Ask my goddamn mom. I've been obsessed with this guy since I was 15. He's one of my favorite musicians and a personal hero of mine. So when John Wayne, one of my favorite humans, suddenly showed up at Twitch trying to stream, having no idea who to talk to or how to get it all set up, and I showed up in his chat with a little wrench and said, hey, can I help you out? he was super down. And the cool thing is, since nobody on my team got music, and in particular the hip hop world, the partnerships guys were actually hyped for me to come in and take over there. And I ended up really deep helping music over my entire career at Twitch. I helped like moderate for and onboard Kenny Beats. I helped get a lot of crazy deals inked. We almost had a big rap battle network on Twitch. I got to help with a ton of stuff, and it was super cool. But the reason I'm bringing up John is he did a really, really important thing for me. He broke my whole never meet your heroes mindset. As great as I was hoping John would be, he was fucking 10 times better. He was just such a good, thoughtful, well-meaning dude. And I am so lucky to have him as a good, close friend today. We talk all the time about everything from like taxes to our lives and how we think about the way the world is working and going. I've helped him start his new YouTube channel, which, to be fair, is entirely his work. I was just like a YouTube coach friend that he could talk through things with. And he is killing it on his YouTube channels now. There's 2 of them. And the fact that he's found a way to, as an independent musician, make a living making content is just unbelievably cool. I love John so much. And he has continued to like motivate me to push to make all of these tools and platforms and everything better. I love John so much. If you're into production, music stuff, highly recommend checking out this channel. There is so much good content here. He did just start a second channel that I think is really cool. He told me that this video is based on a diagram that I had made, which I think is the coolest shit ever. John's the best. The main reason I brought him up is how important he was in teaching me that if I reach out to people I look up to with actual value to bring them, there's a good chance they'll reply and there's a good chance they'll be awesome. And that formed the way I do everything going forward. I need to stop for a sec to thank the giant 50 bomb that we just had on Twitch. Thank you so much, Yuruzu, for gifting 50 subs. Really appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's nothing better than your heroes being fire. So, as I hope we've established here, a lot of important precedent was set for me. Being on the creative team meant that my role as an engineer wasn't just write code and shut up. It was very in the weeds of like working with and being involved with the people who were using the stuff that you did. Being that in the weeds is something I've never been able to give up. I like talking to my users. I like being one of the users. I like being deeply ingrained and involved with the people that I'm building things for. I'll blast through the rest quickly. Eventually, this org kind of fell apart because it was a blend of premium content contracts and helping non-gamers succeed. So it got split and folded into VOD, which is the video on demand platform, which then got folded and I got thrown overboard and I landed in the safety org, which was very, very formative for me as well. The big thing with me switching to the safety org is that I was no longer working with WABA, which meant I no longer got to use Elixir every day. I had to learn Go. I hated it. I got into front end instead, started to like it a bit because this was also right when we were starting the React rewrite of the Twitch site from Ember. And I was just so impressed with the motivation of the team that showed up and was like, no, we're rewriting the whole site from scratch. That was the Twitch beta in 2018, if you remember that. Learned so much from them, was so hyped on their motivation to just come in and do the crazy hard thing you're not supposed to, which is at a 1,500 person company, rewrite everything and succeed. It was so cool. And I loved being part of what was called the Twilight rebuild of Twitch. Twitch Lite is the pun there. But the Twilight repo is still to this day the main repo for the entire Twitch site. I got to help a ton early on. I got to unblock stuff, help them accelerate the launch, got really good at front end really fast, got promoted, got to be involved in a bunch of conversations I probably shouldn't have been, especially as a junior engineer. I got promoted. I got a ton of support from my team. I helped hire up that team from 2 people to like 30. I did a shitload of interviews. I was deep at that time. And I learned so much. I learned how to think and argue and be part of a thing happening from this piece of my career. But safety helped me learn all about how to actually ship inside of like a big moving org, how to fight for your users and keep your platform safe, how to deeply care about the details of the things that you're building, how to think full stack, not just about the back end or the front end, but how everything comes together. And also, I got to build ModView, which is one of the things I am most proud of in my time at Twitch. ModView is an awesome platform. I've talked about it a bunch. I have a whole video that's called like the coolest thing I ever built. Still feel strongly about it. I learned so much about web performance and building great stuff there. And I got to talk to the actual moderators who were using our tools every day. This is a theme you'll notice. I go out of my way to build things where I can talk to and work with the people who are using it every day. But here is where the first cutoff I think matters happens. 2020. In 2020, after we shipped ModView, I switched teams. When I switched teams, I wanted to take what I learned from safety and my other orgs that I worked in at Twitch. I wanted to bring that to the creator side. Because, to be totally honest, even today, as somebody who uses Twitch, as I'm streaming right now, filming these videos, thank you to everybody who's hanging out with us there, the creator dashboard is a significantly worse experience than ModView. As you can hopefully see from me coming in here, in a lot of ways, ModView is a really cool, powerful platform. The fact that I can drag any element and drop it in the sidebar, it stays live and active exactly where it was. I can resize, change. There's even a full edit view here. We went hard making ModView as good and powerful as possible for the creators and specifically the moderators on Twitch. And it was honestly a bit frustrating that ModView had gotten so good while at the same time the creator dashboard was not improving. And I had gotten pretty close with the people on the creator dashboard side. So I decided it was time. I moved to creator org. I really wanted to take the things I learned from safety and obsessing over users and making good user experiences and apply it in the creator space because I'd honestly kind of exhausted how much I could do on the moderation side. I'd built a great full stack user experience from the back to the front for moderation on Twitch, internal and external, and I was out of things to do in safety. So I decided to move to the creator org literally the week after ModView shipped in order to extend the things I had learned and push even further. This was a big mistake. Not in the sense that I shouldn't have moved teams, but in the sense that I used the team move to delay a thing I'd already been thinking about, which was quitting. I loved the safety team. I learned so much from them. I'm still friends with a ton of people in that team. I helped hire a bunch of them. I've helped them with things since then. I love that team. One of the reasons I tell people to get a normal job is so you can find a team like that you love, because those connections will go forever. So many of the reasons I am successful today is the people I met in my time at safety, including some people deep in the Y Combinator world, which is really helpful later on. But I wanted to pursue solving hard, fun problems for users I cared about, and I thought I could do that within the company. And that was the mistake. At that point, I should have been thinking about quitting, and I was, but I told myself, I'll switch to this team, I'll make some impact, I'll get promoted to the role I should be within a year, and if I don't, then I will finally actually quit. This org was a bit of a disaster. I've talked about it a bunch in other videos. I don't want to go too deep on the details here, but they didn't like it when you shipped fast because it made them look bad. And they would always try to find random holes they could poke in the thing, and it never worked. There were a couple particular people in this org that were terrible. There were a couple who were great. Shout out Isaac. Him and I, it's so crazy that we were as close as we were because we were so different. He was really nice and by the books, but also cared a lot about doing the right thing for users. So even though you would think that him is the by the books, do it the right way, the chill way guy, and me is the more bombastic, here's the sledgehammer, let's destroy the thing, that we wouldn't get along well, but we actually got along really well because we both just wanted to make the right thing. So very thankful for him, because when some of the less good people on the team would crash out, they would crash out on him and it would look really bad. When they crashed out on me, it's oh yeah, Theo's hard to work with or whatever, which by the way, no one had ever really said until that team. But when they crashed out on Isaac, it looked a lot worse for them. And it showed that their motivation wasn't keeping the code base clean and safe. Their motivation was looking good, having not shipped for 3 months straight. I shit you not, one of the people who would regularly get in our way did not merge a single PR for 3 fucking months. Insane. I've talked a lot about my drama with that team. That's not what I'm here for. What I'm here to say is I was fucking miserable at this point. This is also when COVID started. So COVID took away my favorite thing, lunch and dinner. I know this sounds like a joke, but it's not. The thing I loved most beyond building real cool things for users was the lunch and dinner conversations with engineers who were much smarter and more experienced than me. I benefited so much from those conversations. I learned so much from those developers, and I would be the fun, excited guy coming in with the cool new things, and they'd be the realistic people showing me how it would, or more importantly, wouldn't work based on reality. I loved those conversations and getting to just talk about things without worrying about what level someone is, what disclosures they have, what they are and aren't allowed to know, just talking about cool Eng stuff. I love those conversations. And I also got one really, really important comment from a developer that I mostly know as Merriweather. He was great. He helped run the Twitch site. He told me around this time, right before COVID actually, that he was really thankful I was at Twitch because it showed him that the energy that he had joined Twitch for wasn't gone. And I initially took that as a massive compliment, and I still do. What I didn't realize was that the energy that like a startup has, that an early stage company pushing really hard to build the right thing for its users, that is what he missed. That is what I was bringing, but I was bringing it to a company that was too big and, to be frank, had lost the interest of their most important users, the creators, too much so. And what he saw as a shining light in a otherwise dark place was actually me slowly getting dimmer by the day. And it took me a while to realize that was what was happening, but I owe him so much, both for the confidence he gave me with that comment, but also for helping me realize and frame the fact that I cared more about the users than the company did, and that's never a good place to be in. And I lost my ability to have lunch and dinner convos about nerdy stuff with Merriweather, with Waba, with all the incredible engineers on safety and chat, moderation, and all the other things I was involved in. And now I was sitting at home, reading code reviews, getting blocked on things that made no sense, and being effectively unable to ship what my users needed. I was going mad fast. After a couple more dramatic things, and also a rewrite of Twitch Studio, which eventually got sunset, it was time. I accepted I couldn't do this anymore. And early in 2021, I quit. It was tough. One of the hardest things I ever did. I was so unsure when I put in my 2 weeks. The day I finished, like I did my like goodbye call, and they're so strict with it that like my last day was a Friday, and I had a goodbye call in the like we use Google Meet, and the goodbye Google Meet right at 5 p.m. on the dot, I get disconnected because they deactivated my account. It was depressing but hilarious, very Twitch of them. And then I did another thing that I would say was a mistake, but it was one of those mistakes I learned a lot from. I joined a music startup. I don't talk about this one too much because there's not too much to say, and the founder of the company I shouldn't have joined is a bit litigious, and I don't want him to have more reasons to come after me, not because he would win the lawsuit, but because I don't feel like dealing with him. He, depending on who you talk to, he allegedly pretended to be the founder of a different startup that shut down and then pretended to bring it back as though he was the original founder. This company is allegedly on my LinkedIn. I don't want to name them or blast this any further. This was a really exciting opportunity for me because I joined as a mobile dev because I was getting deeper into mobile dev stuff. They needed a better Android app and a bit more progress on the iOS app. They had an iOS team contracting that was 3 people that had shipped nothing. I built a React Native app that worked in 3 days. The problem was that the backend that they also had contracted out basically didn't work at all, and the front end that they had for testing it worked even worse. So I ended up building my own new web front end, not even to be the web client, just to let me test the mobile app through the servers. But it very quickly surpassed the original web client, so it became the web client. The Android app we had written in React Native got better than the iOS app was, so it became the iOS app as well. And very quickly, I owned the entire user-facing surface area at this company I had just joined a month before. Learned a ton, shipped a lot, got a lot better at running a team, got a lot better at fighting with somebody who doesn't get it. This is one of the things that was hard for me to learn because when I was at Twitch, I was arguing with people who did get it, like Bill and Waba. These people were both smarter than me. They both understood the things we were building better than I did. But they were also willing to hear me out and let me challenge them in case I could find something they had missed. That was not the case when I was at the music startup. My boss at the music startup, who was the founder, thought they understood engineering better than the entire company, even though they had really not done much engineering. It was really frustrating. At some point, the backend was getting so untenable, and the team that was building it, they were using Redux Saga in the backend. It was an actual disaster. I did a meeting with the guy in charge of that contracting team, and he told me that the way he thinks about building backends is he likes to build a giant hamster ball for his team so they can run around, and even if they hit things, they won't get hurt because the ball will protect them. In that ball was a bunch of bad abstractions around Redux Saga and unbelievably useless unit tests on everything. It was like 50,000 lines of code that didn't work. I rewrote the whole backend without much permission, so it was 500 lines of code, had more features, and could scale significantly better. They blocked it because I didn't have enough unit tests, so I wrote 600 lines of unit tests that hit 100% code coverage and dropped that with my 2-week notice and left. So we're now a bit into 2021. I have quit again, so we'll do that. I quit again. And I'll admit that at this point, I'm a little scared. I went from making, at my peak at Twitch, around $475K a year, which is still insane when I think about it. Just absurd amounts of money. But then I was at this much smaller startup and it was $125K a year, which honestly was fine. I wasn't spending a whole lot of money, especially during COVID. But I went from that to a much scarier number, which was $0 a year. You can see why this was getting scary. When I quit Twitch, I was starting at this company the Monday after when I quit on Friday, and I was writing code on Saturday and Sunday too. Like I didn't take a break at all between these roles. But when I quit here, I had nothing planned. I was starting to talk with some other companies, but I didn't have a concrete like what is next at all. And man, things got interesting. I started interviewing. I interviewed at a couple different places. The big ones that you guys probably know are Railway and Retool. There's a couple other ones that I talked to. One that's important was Stationhead, another music startup. These interviews were essential for me. I got an offer from Railway. It was pretty clear I had an offer pending from Station. I don't even remember if it was formal or not, but like they really wanted to hire me. Retool, I didn't, but we had really good conversations. I talked to the CEO. They had like 10 employees at the time. They now have like over 500. They're a really big company now. But I liked all of these companies quite a bit. At the same time, though, I had a side project, Round. The concept for Round that you're seeing here might feel familiar. If so, there's a reason that we'll get to. I started Round because I was playing more with WebRTC. I'd always been a fan of it and was playing with it when I was at Twitch. I wanted to see how far you could push WebRTC to make high quality content. And also, I was watching a lot of collaborative content with like lots of different streamers doing stuff together, fighting Discord and Zoom to make it all work. One of those creators had said straight up in their content, I would pay any amount of money for something that sucks less than Discord for doing this. I just want to be able to drag people around in OBS and have it all work. I thought, I think I can make that happen. So I built a tool to make it easier to do those types of live collaborations. Round.t3.gg was the URL. This was a fun side project. I got really into WebRTC, building a full stack application. This was also originally a Vite project on Vercel with the API directory. It became my first Next.js project. So this side project, Round, got surprisingly popular. I would like to make sure it is clear that at this point, I was still not a content creator. I had streamed on Twitch like 2 times, but that was about it. Not really a creator, but I cared a lot about creators, and I was still burned that when I was at Twitch, I didn't get to actually build for creators yet. It's what I had joined to do. I didn't get to. I was upset. I left, and now I was going to finally do it as a side project. I just wanted something for creators to use. I showed a bunch of creators. One in particular, who was actually not really a creator, but a good friend and coworker of mine from when I was on the creative team at Twitch, Gunrun, hits me up. Gunrun and I, funny enough, had almost made a startup of our own while we were at Twitch. We had talked about it. He really wanted to do anime VTubing type stuff. He was really into the anime world. He had a lot of friends from Japan. It was just the thing he wanted to do. I don't give a shit about anime. It is not my thing in the slightest. But when I showed what I had built to Gunrun, he asked for one feature. I got that feature working, and he just looks at me and says, what do I have to pay you to work on this full time? Because I need it for my startup, VShojo. VShojo is the org that is, as far as I know, the biggest VTuber organization in the West. And Iron Mouse, who is one of the biggest streamers in the history of Twitch, the biggest and most successful woman on the platform to this day. Iron Mouse was the first ever user of Round, otherwise known now as Ping. The combination of Gunrun really wanting this to go further, and my talks with all of these folks, in particular with Jake from Railway, the CEO, and Murray from Stationhead, who's become a good friend since. Jake from Railway gave me an awesome offer, but said, I see where your heart is. you need to do a startup. Murray from Stationhead said, I dearly want you on this team. I need to be able to get your advice, even if you're not on this team. That all said, you should do a startup. And then Gunrun told me he would pay whatever it takes to get us using Ping and get it ready for what they needed. Eventually, we were building bespoke iPad apps so he could bring his creators out in the real world and all sorts of other things. That combination led to me doing the thing never, ever thought I would do. And in September of 2021, I incorporated T3 Tools, Inc. The plan was that we would build a suite of creator tools focused on live and video. Think like the Adobe suite, but for live video. And I was so excited to like really be diving into the weeds and making something awesome. Funny enough, another tangent that was going on around here is I changed roommates right around the same time. I'd say like right there-ish. My roommate at the time had moved to Germany, and my friend from college who was in the city was going through his own roommate drama, funny enough, from people I had introduced him to. I felt bad. I knew I would like him a lot. I needed someone to fill the space, so I hit him up, and that's how Mark became my roommate. When Mark became my roommate, I didn't know how much money he made. And when he told me, I felt sick because I knew how hard he worked. I knew the stuff he was doing, and he was making, I don't know if I should share it. I don't care. He was making like $60K a year, which is barely livable in SF, especially like living in a high-end apartment and like being in the tech world. It was horrifying. So I gave him just some examples of places he could work. And the example I gave him was Retool. Because it was like, oh, you do technical support stuff for like people who know what they're doing, and you're good at talking to engineers. Retool is an example of a company I recently talked to that could make sense for you. Within 2 weeks of moving in, and within a week or so of me having that conversation with him, without asking for any help or anything from me, he had found Retool, reached out, applied, talked to a bunch of people, and gotten the job as one of their first ever support engineers. With no input from me whatsoever, beyond me mentioning the name briefly in a conversation. Within 2 weeks of moving in, he was working at Retool and had more than doubled his salary. And I realized very quickly how insanely motivated Mark was. If you give him an opportunity, he will run like the fucking wind to make sure he can execute on it, like I've never seen. And I have friends of Mark in chat right now that had no idea he was getting fleeced like that, and also, very Mark move. He killed it. So that had happened, and also of note is that Retool was a YC startup. So Mark went to Retool, I incorporated my company, things ramped up fast. Another big part of why I incorporated, one of the most important people I talked to go back up here, was Bill. Bill never did a startup of his own, but he was always close to early stage stuff. So I really valued his perspective, especially as a father with 2 kids that had, I don't want to say took the easy path, but took the family, focus on your life and the people around you path, but clearly also cared a lot about the startup world, the hardworking world, and that stuff too. So I used him as kind of like my ground for doing this. And when he told me it was time I needed to do a startup, that helped a lot. It was the combination of having the 2 startups I talked to that I liked the most tell me it's time, Gunrun tell me that he needs the product, and Bill telling me this is the last chance I'll get to do it. I should do it if I want to, and he thinks that I should. All of that together killed my very anti-startup bias. Like, I used to make fun of startup bros all the time, and to be fair, I still do. I just have much more ammo when I do it. I did not think this life was for me. I was so hesitant, and you could see my hesitation as you see the things I did here. Instead of quitting Twitch to build what I wanted to for creators, I switched teams. Instead of making my own startup, I found another small music startup so I could build there. Instead of committing to my startup, I interviewed at a bunch of different places so I could work on it on the side. And then, after everything pointed me towards it's time, I caved and I did it. And it was one of the best things I'd ever done for myself. I was building way more. I was playing with way more tech. I was making things I was excited about. I was talking to my users every day. We were growing like mad. The product was hype. We had a ton of users that were super excited. I met a bunch of people between September and December. I met a bunch of people for the first time who since then have become like my closest friends. Like, I honestly probably met as many people between September and December of 2021 that I'm still talking to today as between 2017 and up to that point. When I incorporated, I knew I needed to raise. both because I was slowly selling off my Amazon stock just to like pay for my apartment and pay for the infrastructure for the product. And I wanted to bring on a designer because as good as I am, this is not a beautiful design. The image blur is because the old image component from Next.js didn't have a good solution for Wayback Machine capturing it. So there doesn't have the high-res images from there. It's fine. You're not missing much. Somehow it's the video, though. I'm not a designer. And this was before I'd even like started getting more into design. It was a bit rough, but it worked. People were liking it a lot. They were using it heavily, and they would customize how it looked in OBS directly instead. But I needed a designer. I knew I needed a designer. As you guys know, I love working with good designers. And I was referred a designer from Jake from Railway. I really wanted her, but she wanted a more reasonable salary, and I couldn't pay her $150K out of my fucking pocket at the moment. As much money as I had saved, I'd not saved enough for that. So I decided, fine, it's time to raise some money. So I raised around $300K from my rich homies. Those rich homies included Murray from Station Head, almost included Jake from Railway, but he'd actually given me a stipulation of when I'm raising money, give a hard deadline for when to pay the safe. And if they don't pay it in time, cut them off. And then he missed the deadline. So I felt bad following his own advice. Bill was one of my first investments. Funny enough, the first check to land was Dax. Dax had found me in Twitter Spaces, just talking about dev stuff, found my vibe fun and interesting, and was confident I would do well, and threw one of his first few angel checks into what I was building with T3 Tools. Bill was check number 2, and the rest were a combination of friends from Twitch, old coworkers, and also people I knew from college who had went other paths that had a bunch of money from like Microsoft and Dropbox and other companies they all worked at. And it put together a set of like 15 to 30 people, I don't remember the exact number honestly, that threw in 10 to 20K checks, getting us up to around 300K of money in the bank, which is enough to pay my designer for a little bit, enough to pay me enough to cover my rent. It was clear that we needed more, and it was also clear I did not know how to talk to investors really at all. I could talk to my friends and convince them we were going to do something big, but I didn't know how to explain this to an investor. So I applied to an accelerator. I applied to South Park Commons. I did not get into South Park Commons. I took that pretty much exact application and sent it to Y Combinator. Despite the fact that South Park Commons is very obviously so a much less successful accelerator, they haven't had any major companies exit like through them. South Park Commons denied me immediately, gave me no feedback or anything. Y Combinator invited me to add more information after I passed the first set of screening, and I did. They then invited me to do a quick screening call, and they liked me. They then invited me to another interview with Michael Seibel, and I was so lucky that Michael Seibel took a liking to me. Michael Seibel is one of the smartest human beings that I have ever had the pleasure of talking to. If you're not familiar with him, Michael was one of the original founders of Twitch. He was kind of the reasonable guy in the team that made sure things actually happened, that nobody killed themselves with their overworking, that everybody had food, that the engineers were working on real stuff, that they weren't going to go out of business, did the business side of Twitch, specifically during the Justin TV days. He was the one who could wrangle all the chaos between Justin Khan live streaming his chaotic life, Emmett Shear being a degenerate doing nothing but playing StarCraft all day, and all of the tech that they had to support and build to make it all happen. Michael was the glue that held it together. And at the time, he was the CEO and managing director of Y Combinator. He was also an active group partner. So even though he was running the whole thing, he also had the 15 to 20 companies of the 400-ish at the time they would do per batch that he would take under his wing as the like ones he would help out and focus on. I am so lucky that I got to learn from him and work with him the way I did. I just realized that there's one other important piece I didn't cover that I think is important context before I explain how I actually got in. This is a thing I've never shown before. This is the oldest videos on my YouTube channel. You'll see there's a couple here from 2010 and older, from back when I was posting stupid skate videos. I had one from 2019 where I was playing with the iPhone 11 right when it dropped. And then in August and September, I made these two unlisted videos that briefly explained what I had built and what it was for. This one was the YC pitch because they required you submit a 1-minute video that described what you built and why you were building it. This has never been seen by anyone other than a couple close friends and Y Combinator themselves. I have not seen this video in a very long time. I will admit I am scared to play this. I am going to cringe so hard because I had no idea how to do YouTube at the time.
Howdy, I'm Theo, founder of T3 Tools and creator of Round. After working at Twitch for over 4 years and helping build the foundation for TTFM Labs, I'm really excited to break off on my own in the live content space. Right now, streaming with your friends is way too difficult. I want to make that easier with a simple product that guarantees a high quality experience both for the creators and for the consumers of that content. What I have now is a simple Zoom-like web app that allows you to embed directly into your program of choice and include your branding from Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, wherever you come from, as part of the core experience. I've only shown this to a handful of friends, and the content they've created has already reached over 500,000 users. I know that we can do something really powerful here, and I have a lot of people who are eager to start using the product. I just don't have the bandwidth to support them myself. I'm a solo founder. I built everything I have here on my own, and I only quit my job last week in order to take this on full time. I want to expand the team so I can take on more users and see where we can take this. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
This is the actual product demo.
Howdy, I'm Theo, founder of T3 Tools and creator of Round. After a decade of supporting creators and over 4 years of working at Twitch, I've noticed a growing hole in the media.
Oh God, I just have to complain about that mic placement. What was I doing? God. Anyways.
The demand for compelling live content is exponentially growing. YouTube and Facebook are spending billions on content acquisition, and Twitch has more than doubled viewership over the past year. Despite all of this movement, the tools creators use have stayed largely stagnant. The number of media creation tools focused on live content is surprisingly small. Over 70% of streamers on Twitch use the open source project OBS to stream. If they want to add things to their stream, such as chat, overlays, etc., they use either Streamlabs or Stream Elements to do such. If they want anything beyond those simple additions, they're probably stuck rolling their own solution for it. There is no generic set of reliable tools for live content creators. The gap between the tools used by streamers and those used by broadcast studios is massive, to be frank. There is no Adobe Suite standard here. We think we could provide that standard. Our first product is a video conferencing app named Round. We've identified multi-person podcast-style content to be one of the biggest pain points for creators, and we decided to tackle it head-on with a Zoom-styled app built from the ground up for streamers. Let's take a look. Welcome to round.t3.gg. To start using Round, we have to sign in with a Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube account. This is to allow your call experience to be identified directly by your brand. So when you see Ninja from Twitch on Round, you know that is really Ninja from Twitch. When you get to the homepage, you'll see all of the calls you've been invited to, as well as any people that might be in them. You see here, there's somebody in my room, so I'm going to hop in and...
I know people are going to see Prime there and assume that was Primogen. It wasn't. There was another streamer named Prime K's who was doing collaborative, political stuff, who was really interested in doing live collabs using Ping, Round by T3 Tools. I did not know who Primogen was at this point. I was not doing content yet. I would go live to demo the product and test things and make sure it works, but I wasn't really a streamer at all yet.
Oh, it's me. That's funny. I'll just close my other window for now. As you can see, the call experience is very similar to that of Zoom or any similar product, but there are a few hidden niceties that make it uniquely good for content creation. The first one being the nameplates in the corner, which are identified directly by the account that I signed in with. So you can know when you see Theo and the Twitch logo in the corner that this is really Theo from Twitch. You also have the accent for the call, which is chosen in the settings menu. I chose this nice light blue color, and if I shut up, you'll see it hides itself to traditional mic activity indication. The more important features are the customization as well as the stream-focused tools, in this case, stream mode. When I click this button, all of the UI is hidden because it all opened up in a pop-out window that allows me to mute, unmute, hide, show camera, or see chat, allow people into the call, etc. This allows me to have one specific window.
I can't do it. The first one wasn't that bad. Me trying to talk about a thing without being good at talking yet, that was a lot harder. Do I have to keep playing it? Do I have to? For context, chat is saying that I have to let it finish.
that I can capture for OBS and then stream directly to whatever platform I am currently live streaming on. This platform has proven to be a very compelling tool for many creators already. I've seen it used for everything from Dungeons and Dragons streams to VTubers just playing around to musicians that love it for its 100 millisecond or lower latency. I'm really excited to see how far I can push Round and what other tools I can build using the infrastructure that I've built Round on top of. I could see a future where Round is the tool of choice used by broadcast television for doing interviews, or a random streamer inviting a person from Twitter to come on and talk about some politics. I would love to see all of these use cases and more explored by Round and the technology that we've built here, and I'm ready to expand the team to do such. Thank you so much for your time and listening to what we have to offer here. I hope that you take the time to reach out. You can reach me on Twitter at t3.gg, spelt out t3.dotgg, or you can go to round.t3.gg and join us on Discord or Twitter directly from there. Thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Ugh, that hurt me. I was not a creator yet. A lot of people seem to think I made the company after being a YouTuber. They just don't have the order of events right. I was not even starting to consider making my own content yet at this point, but the product was real. I had actual people using it. Between those two videos, remember the first one I showed was actually second. I got a lot better at presenting myself, and I cared a lot more at that point too. And had talked to a lot of people, watched a lot of like how to pitch, all the type of stuff, and also learned how to make eye contact with the lens. Hi, still don't have a teleprompter yet. I do now, but I learned I actually hate scripting, so I don't script my videos. I use the teleprompter so I can see myself and make sure I'm in frame. Long tangent aside. The thing I wanted to show there was that I had presented in a very organic way what I was doing and why I was building it, and you could tell that I was much more an engineer than a marketer. You might think otherwise now, but I had no idea what I was doing then. How the hell did that product get into Y Combinator, though? Specifically, how did Michael Seibel let that product in? Because he knew better. His phrase is something along the lines of like, we both know it's the mouse and the cat and mouse game, but it's what he meant is we both know that it's the smaller part of this industry. He clearly wanted to push me towards like doing tools for podcasters or something. But my answer to this question was why I got into Y Combinator. My answer, and I still firmly believe this, even if we didn't build what I was thinking when I said it. My answer was that all video is live. It might not be live in the sense that it is being streamed directly from my camera to your computer when I'm doing it. Although right now it is, as you guys probably know, I film myself live on Twitch. So you see the thing I'm filming as I film it. You can ask questions, help me make sure I get things right. Really fun process, but you'll understand why I'm there in a second, because it was my opinion that all video is live until it hits a point where it dies. That point could be the SD card on your camera. It's live when I'm talking to the camera, and then it dies when it hits the SD card. And then I have to take out the SD card, put it in my computer, transfer the content over. And then I have to take that content and sort through it and label it, or upload it so that my editor can have access to it, or transcode it so it's in the right format for my editing software. I then have to open said editing software and start trimming it down from there after organizing it and figuring out where it needs to be. All of these spots in the process are dead spots. There were multiple places in the video creation pipeline where your video dies. And if you can make more of the pipeline live, if you can make it so more of the steps happen as a live synchronous process instead of having blocking steps along the way, you will make video production significantly more efficient. This is why I can run a YouTube channel that posts videos every day and run a company that is shipping code every day at the same time. It's because I deeply believed that live video production pipelines could make video production both more efficient and higher quality. Michael really liked that answer. And that's why I got into YC, because I had a novel insight and thought on why this thing that he knew was doomed from the start could actually be valuable. And he then spent the rest of the batch convincing me, not necessarily directly, but giving me the things I needed to realize that building a product for Twitch streamers was a lost cause, an absolutely sinking ship before it had even taken off. He introduced me to a lot of people who came from both the broadcast TV world and the content creator like business world that were all very useful connections. I met Emery, who was the founder of Frame.io, which sold to Adobe for $1.25 billion. He was an early investor as well once we went through YC. And all of these people had given me what I needed to realize that creator tools were not the move, but I was still really committed. I really wanted to figure it out. Despite all of this, despite how awesome Michael was at like staring into my soul and asking the question that haunts me but also excites me. When he called me and told me I was in, I wasn't sure what to say yet. I was still so skeptical, especially because YC would only give you $125K and take 7% of the company. I had just raised $300K and gave up less than 5% of the company in the process. That seemed like a really bad deal. And I didn't really think YC was that great or important or that I would get a whole lot from it and I could just go raise the money elsewhere myself. So I spent a lot of time slaving over it. I asked Michael, how long do I have to decide? It turns out when he called me, which was the night of my interview, the batch actually started like the next day. Not the whole batch, but like the onboarding for it started the next day. I had no idea that the timelines were that tight, but he told me I had until 8 a.m. the next morning to decide and that he would call me at 7:50 to figure out if I was in or not. So I spent that entire night, I was up far too late, researching, reaching out to everyone I could, just like going back and forth with Mark for hours. Mark was still at Retool, which was actually very helpful because his founder, the CEO of Retool, was also a YC founder, so he had a lot of thoughts too. The thing that pushed me over the line is the thing I foreshadowed about earlier. Bill and Waba. These two people were like far opposite sides of a spectrum. They very rarely agreed on things. I love them both dearly. I learned so much from both of them. It was so rare for them to have like a deep set agreement on a complex thing. They always had some weird angle that kept them from like aligning, but I could learn so much from how they would disagree. I realized I needed my mentors in this moment. I hit up both Bill and Waba separately. I did a call with Bill. As I've mentioned, he's one of the kindest people I've ever gotten to work with. I like hang out with his kids and give them like tips in Pokemon and stuff. Like he's a really close friend to the point of like family. He has never expressed anything but excitement towards the stuff I was doing. And when I told Bill that I was considering not taking the offer because of the dilution, because of the percentage they would get for the money, without hesitation, Bill says, "I trust you to do what is right for your company, Theo. I just need you to know I would be very disappointed if you said no to Y Combinator." And he had never expressed that type of sentiment with me ever. So that one hit me really hard. And that's when I hit up Waba because I expected them to disagree adamantly and I wanted the other perspective. I wanted someone, especially more on like the capitalist side, to say, no, that's a huge percentage for not much money. What are you doing? So when I hit up Waba, I was very much expecting that. I got back one sentence. "You'd be fucking stupid to not take the deal, Theo." And that's when I decided I have to do it. Because who am I to disagree with both Bill and Waba? And I am so thankful I listened to them and I took that one last piece of Waba advice. Because Y Combinator was one of the best things I ever did for myself. I am so thankful they convinced me. I got so much out of YC. So it's 7:50 in the morning, the day that the onboarding starts. I didn't even know that part. I just thought he picked an arbitrary time for the deadline. He calls me at 7:50, says, "So, are you in?" I say yes. He says, "Awesome. You need to find co-founders. You do not want to do this shit yourself. By the way, here's the Zoom link. Onboarding starts in, 2 minutes." Hangs up. I open the Zoom. There's 500 people in it. Michael joins. He runs it. I still did not know enough about Y Combinator to understand the fact that he was the one who ran it, and he'd be my group partner, and he'd be doing all these different things, and he'd be the one to call me on my cell phone from his goddamn phone himself. And there was one last thing I was really excited about. As we established earlier, one of the reasons I quit was that COVID had taken my favorite thing. I had lost my lunch and dinner nerd out sessions. I had been desperately looking for a way to fill that need. I didn't get it from this startup because when I was doing this startup, I was the most technical person and all the other engineers didn't really want to talk about engineering. There were one or two who did, but we were all so busy we never got to hang out and we were all remote anyway, so we didn't get that like casual chit chat time. I did get to do a lot of mentorship there though, which was very helpful for me as I figured out what I wanted to do longer term. I made a bunch of friends in the space, but like Jake and I could talk a lot about tech stuff, but we were in such different worlds. We didn't have much to chat about. Retool I lost touch with as soon as I got it. And my friend from Stationhead, Murray, was non-technical. He was the like finance business guy and operations guy. He didn't know much about code at all. So my poor roommate, Mark, was taking the brunt of my needing to nerd out. And also, I started participating more in Twitter Spaces. It was still a very new thing at the time. I had like under 200 followers probably. I was just using it as a way to like nerd out about tech. I ended up meeting some incredible people through those Twitter Spaces. I ended up as a straight up nobody befriending Tanner Lindsley, the creator of React Query, and asking him about things that he was excited enough about to ask me to go research TRPC and Blitz.js to tell him which ones were good and what was good about them. And that's how I discovered TRPC, by nerding out with Tanner in a Twitter space when he didn't even really know what it was. He just knew it used React Query and was full stack type safety. So I got so much from those spaces. It was incredible. That's one of my one of the highlights of my life was this window from September to December of 2021. As I mentioned before, I met so many of my closest friends, the people that I talk to every day that mean the most to me, in that window. When I got into YC, when I raised all this money, when Michael took me under his wing for some stupid goddamn reason, he saw something in me. And when these spaces introduced me to a much larger set of my long-term software development heroes. And I was so excited to be in YC because I would finally get to nerd out with a bunch of fellow devs again. And this was the most heartbreaking thing for me. We get to December. Well, I guess the important point is we get to January 2022. I was the winter 22 batch. YC starts. And I am so excited to finally get to nerd out with a bunch of other startups. And this was the thing that broke me. Nobody wanted to nerd out. Everyone wanted to talk business. Everybody wanted to talk distribution. They knew me as the media guy, even though I wasn't popular yet. They knew me as the person who understood distribution and media. So they kept asking me for help with that side. Nobody wanted to talk about new frameworks and JavaScript stuff. Nobody wanted to talk about how to build scalable solutions and technologies. Nobody gave a single flying fuck about TRPC. The TRPC thing in particular irked me, and it was actually irking me back around this time. I was talking about how cool the TRPC stuff was with Next.js and Tailwind and the full stack ecosystem that I was building with and the stack I had created for it. People didn't get it, but I made a friend, Jacob Evans, who I still love dearly. He's probably hanging out in chat helping moderate and keep things safe here, and if not, I'm sure he'll be here soon. Jacob hosted a Twitter space every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night that I would participate in almost always. And we became really close friends really, really fast. And he gave me the inspiration to go as far as I've gone with all of this. I owe Jacob for fucking ever. Jacob was a big testing guy. He loved unit testing, end-to-end testing, integration testing, and all of those things. He'd give workshops on testing. I am not the biggest testing guy. I think it's useful for keeping things from regressing when you know risk areas and surfaces. But just writing tests for the sake of it, not my thing. I also knew that with this new full stack way of building, the need for those types of tests was reducing very quickly. He had a big open source code base that he had that was a big pile of bad decisions on Firebase. And I offered, in order to prove to him that my stack was good, to rewrite that whole project from scratch using what became the T3 stack. I did it in 2 hours. I sent him the repo. He was absolutely blown away with it. I then asked him, where would I put the tests? And he looked through the whole thing, thought deeply about it, and admitted that there wasn't really anywhere that it made sense to stuff tests in. Then we did another one of those Twitter spaces, ranted a bunch about how cool my stack was, and people just didn't get it. It was fun to talk about in an audio-only Twitter space, but people couldn't see it without literally seeing it. I also wanted to do more streaming so I could better understand what creators needed. So I did one last really stupid thing. I went live near the end of November 2021 to show off what I had coined as the T3 stack. I already owned T3.gg. It was inspired by my friend 3V Werner from Twitch. It's the 3 letters after the T. I owned T3.gg before Tailwind or TRPC were even thoughts. People seem to think it stands for Tailwind TypeScript TRPC. I'll let you retcon it. It's wrong, but go nuts. It was meant to just be my name. Also, a pun on Tier 3, which is the highest tier of subscription on Twitch. I was still very Twitch-pilled. So I stream myself on Twitch, building a full-stack app from scratch to show off my stack and my way of thinking and building. And this got a couple hundred plays. I was really proud of it. I was so pumped that my little chaotic stack and way of thinking and building had a couple hundred people who thought it was really cool. It was awesome. Then, out of nowhere, Dan Abramov posts on Twitter saying that he wants to do some mock job interviews to show people what it's like to do a job interview with somebody that is established as being a good engineer, but also isn't someone who does traditional interviews. Like, he doesn't do the leak code type stuff at all. He had already done a couple interviews with other creators. Many of them I'm friends with to this day. They're all great creators, but they all had a flaw. The flaw was nothing to do with who they are or how talented they are. It was the fact that most of them had been doing content as their primary thing for a while, and I don't think any of them had ever actually conducted job interviews before. And if they had, it had been a very long time. So their skills for delivering an interview were not great. I reached out to Dan for a couple reasons. One was that I really wanted to get closer with him. I'd already made music recommendations. We had chatted a little bit. I was still an absolute nobody, well under 1,000 followers on Twitter still at this point. But I wanted to show what a good technical interview that wasn't just leak code looked like. I wanted to show off, selfishly, my product Ping and use that for the interview. I wanted to do more creation stuff and maybe get some more eyes on my things. But most importantly, I just wanted to showcase a really good interview with the Theo method, my way of thinking about and doing interviews. I went as far as publishing my interview notes that I would give to candidates. They would always get something like this when I was doing a more traditional formal interview that would break down exactly how we thought about the interview and give them options for what path to take for the interview. I have a bunch of content breaking down how I think about interviews and why I do it the different way that I do it. But that interview was meant more to showcase what it looked like in practice to do it. And I was really proud. I still think that video is one of the better examples of how to do a good technical interview that I've seen on the internet. I'm also lucky that I'm good at taking the step back and analyze the thing I did and say, if this wasn't me, would I see the value in this thing? And I'm really proud of this interview. I feel like if I had seen someone else do this, I would have been blown away with it and shared it to a ton of people. I was very proud of it. As cringe as my ability to talk and film and edit and all of that was, it showed what I wanted to show. And this did very well, both because it's Dan Abramov. He's popular. People were clicking for him. But also, it was the best of the interviews. Not because I'm a better creator. Visually and structurally, it was the worst. But it was the best example of how to do an interview for somebody like Dan. And I think it showed Dan's skills the best by far. I was really proud of this. People really liked this video. And it kind of is the thing that blew up my channel. That at the time, remember, I was not taking this seriously at all. I was doing this because I had feelings about these particular things, and I wanted to share those feelings with the world in a way that was more useful so I could bring up the video in a Twitter space so they could go watch it and see what I actually meant. I had no idea where this was going to go. I had also become pretty close with Ryan Carniato, the creator of Solid.js at this point, and was starting to see more and more of what made Solid great. So my next video was me recreating the Roundest tutorial with Solid. And I assumed, because these two videos had blown up, they both got 100K plays pretty quick, that this one would be just as successful. I had no idea what the troughs of YouTube were like and the ceilings and the floors. I just didn't understand what being a creator was yet. I was still very new to all of this. And I'm assuming this was December or January. I remember doing this around Thanksgiving. Or no, it was Christmas. Yeah. I put this video out Christmas Eve. And my skin was still terrible. This was very pre-Accutane. God, that fucked with my head so much at the time too. I had no idea what I was doing. When this video bombed, it broke my fucking heart. But at the same time, I had just gone into Y Combinator. It was spinning up. That was my focus. I went all in on YC from January to March, which was the 3 months of that window. I had played with the creation stuff a bit. I had my fun, but I needed to build tools, not make videos. And I posted basically no content from when the batch started to when the batch ended. I would do a stream every Thursday to dog food the product, and I would always have a guest on those streams. For my first 3 months, every stream had a guest, and it was really focused on talking to them. It didn't matter. The content, as fun as it was for me and as cool as it was to demo Ping, interview content is really hard to do in a way that is compelling, and it wasn't teaching me shit about YouTube or content creation. It was more learning how to use OBS more than anything. And again, it just wasn't my focus. I was still all in on YC. I had gotten into Y Combinator before I had started making videos, before I'd even really started streaming. So I got into YC, I was doing these Twitter spaces, I was nerding out. I made the YouTube channel to better demonstrate things I couldn't do just talking in a Twitter space. I still thought Twitter would be my main platform at the time, as hilarious as that was. Maybe Twitch would help a lot too, but I never thought of YouTube as a thing that would be core to me at all. YC starts, we go ham. We do everything we can to make the product as good as possible. And I convinced Mark to quit his job on December 31st and the batch starts January 1st, and we make it fucking happen. So proud of him, so proud of us. We built something awesome. We won the Twitch streamer market, and our reward for that was like $8K a month. Winning half the streamers makes you no money because streamers don't spend a lot of money and they don't stick around for a long time. They go to what's novel and then they move on. And if they can just do the call in Discord, even if it sucks to do, they will do the call in Discord, screen capture it, and let everything fall apart, complain a bunch about it, and then never try the actual tool. I have a whole video about this. I think it's titled like Why Good Engineers Burn Out or something, but it's really about the difference between a creator adopting something versus an engineer adopting something. That took me a long time to learn. But by the end of the YC batch, nobody wanted to nerd out with me. Our product was doing well, not as well as we wanted, because just even though we were winning the space, we weren't making a lot of money from it. I had hired too many people. I think we had like 5 or 6 employees. Pretty sure it was 6. Yeah, we had 6 employees at the time. We were going really hard. We raised a bunch of money at the end of the batch, and I was going kind of nuts. I just wanted to fucking nerd out so badly. And I felt like I didn't really understand creators because they would tell me they wanted this thing and that they would use this thing. And then they just didn't. And it was so hard and confusing for me to work around all of that I eventually got frustrated and kind of just needed to get it out of me. So the 2 main motivators, when it came to April, which, the spoiler, April 2022 is when I went from posting once every month to once every week, sometimes even more. Going hard on YouTube. This is around the time where I did the collab stream with Prime, where I fought with him over unit testing stuff, which obviously, huge bump to my channel. The reason I did that, the reason I started making more content, the reason I did all of this, is I just needed to nerd out, to talk about the new framework that I thought was cool, to deep dive on whatever patterns I was enjoying at work, to explain why I thought TRPC was the coolest shit in the world, how I got into Next.js and Vercel. I just wanted to talk about all of these things so badly. And I wanted to better understand why creators were using but not using our product and what it would mean for us to go all in on creators. What I never, ever would have imagined is I blew up almost immediately. We've had ups and downs, as every creator does, but I didn't have that awkward growing phase that a lot of creators do where they have to spend years making content that nobody sees and then eventually it works. I somehow got to skip all of that. And I'm so fortunate that that is the case because I did not have the wherewithal to push through the nobody watching my stuff phase, like at all. I just wanted to have more senior dev conversations. To be honest, if the Prime time existed, Prime's second channel that he is now his main channel, the one where he actually deep dives on things and just records things on stream. If that channel existed before this moment, I probably would have just been one of the most active people in his community, helping however I could. But I needed a place where I could nerd out. I needed a community that was focused on talking about more senior engineering topics. And since it didn't exist, I made it. And it seems like a shitload of other people wanted it too. My honest bet at this point in time was that, like, best case, I'd get 10K subs. I'd get a couple hundred, maybe a few thousand views a video on average. And that would be awesome. I never would have imagined I'd hit 100K subs in my first year. Never would have imagined that my videos would be as successful as they are, that we'd find this massive set of people who would be interested in watching more senior content. When I would tell people that I made YouTube videos about software, for the first year, the response was always the exact same thing. Oh, so you make tutorials for beginners? Because that's what tech content meant at the time. And I was so proud to show it didn't have to be that. I'm not the biggest. I'm not the best. I'm not some super genius that predicted this is where everything was going. I just made the fucking thing I wanted and it worked. And that's a lesson that I got from YC. Make something people want. This is a poster that they throw everywhere. This is I think I have a shirt that says this. It's a big Paul Graham quote. This concept hit me deeply because I already somewhat operated this way, but I felt like I was a rebel for doing it, for looking at a product pitch and saying, this is dumb. The people who would use this have no reason to. It doesn't make sense for them. In order to make something people want, you have to understand those people and what they want. You have to know how to make something. You have to know what they want first. And people start with the making and then figure out the wants. I'd even kind of fallen for that. I had started from a place of, I see these creators asking for this thing. I'm going to build it for them. But it's much easier to make something people want if you are people. If you're making something that you want deeply enough, that you care about, that solves a problem you have, you will make much better decisions because you're making the thing that you want so that you can use it. But then you also have to be able to compromise and see what others want it for and find the balance there, which is always a challenge. Things like, I don't ever have an interest in something like voice mode for T3 chat because I just don't talk to my computer, I type to my computer. But a lot of people like to talk to their computers and to their phones. So I have to compromise and figure out how we're going to do voice mode because even though it's not my thing, it is a thing that people want, even if I'm not people in this case. T3 chat itself was a thing I deeply, desperately wanted because I hated using the other chat apps. That's why I made it. All of the things I have built started from being something I wanted other than Round, which had been rebranded at this point to Ping by Ping Labs. I learned my lesson over this next year, especially because my channel was working. When I realized that by making something I wanted on YouTube, I could blow up immediately. And the harsh reality of like all of the creators that were early adopters of Ping, there are so many awesome people in that group that I still care dearly about. I was more popular than all but like 4 of our 1,000-ish users. And that hit me hard. The reality that I, in a month, could surpass the majority of our users, this investment in like live being the future just isn't working. Especially when I, at this point, had realized like live sucks. Live streaming isn't useful beyond a method for creating content and hanging out with your community, but it doesn't give you any growth or any reach. It's just an engagement. And the number of viewers I would have in my streams skyrocketed when I started posting videos and it was clear that they came from stream. But my viewership did not come from Twitch. It didn't even come from Twitter. It came from compelling YouTube videos that brought people to me. And I learned so much so fast about the creator world, about how attention works, about how people engage with things and ideas and conversations and so much more. And most importantly, I started editing my own videos. And by editing my own videos and listening to my voice constantly, I got way better at speaking. As you can probably tell with the difference between now and the videos I played earlier, hearing myself talk and listening and watching for hours made me very aware of how I spoke and what did and didn't work. And that made me just better at most things. It made me way better at having conversations in person. It made me way better thinking about copy and branding and the way my web pages would describe the products I was building. It made me way better at raising money because I could talk to investors and be really compelling and engaging in the conversation. It just made me better at explaining the things that go on in my head. One of the best things I ever did for myself was editing my own videos for a long time, from really just April onwards. And a huge, huge shout out to Adez, who just randomly volunteered to edit my stuff for me for free and carried my channel in the early days. It wouldn't even let me pay him. He ended up getting a job at Sentry and having to ramp down on the editing, which is also, thankfully, when I ramped up on it and got way better at it. But Adez was great. I owe him a ton. Mir came in and helped a bunch, especially on like the shorts and like shorter form side. But eventually, as the business was ramping up and I was getting too busy to do the editing, and most importantly, I had fallen in love with video editing, that's when FaZe hit me up. He'd actually hit me up before about offering to edit for me, and then months later hit me up about some skateboard stuff. And I realized, oh, you're a skater, you're a music nerd, and you want to edit for me. There's enough overlap in those things that I have a feeling we're going to vibe. I really need the help right now. Down to come over and help us out a bit. And FaZe, who is here in chat, who has edited the vast majority of the videos on my channel, not just recently, but like in general, very quickly started carrying the channel for me. And when you get to edit a video a day, you skill up fast. He got way better super quick. We're still a Final Cut house. We're still all editing nerds. We'd geek out about the stuff all the time. And I think a big part of why it worked was that I wasn't hiring him so that I wouldn't think about the work anymore. I hired him because I couldn't spend time doing it. And I wanted to live like vicariously through him to an extent as he did the editing. And he got real good real fast. Huge shout out to FaZe, carrying this channel to the point where most of you guys are here now. But I had to get good at editing first. I would never have hired the right editor if I didn't get good first and do it for too long. I was editing for like 6 months longer than I probably should have, but I think that was a good thing. And I give this advice to everybody hiring. Don't hire for the thing you want to avoid. Hire for the thing you love so you'll go get good at the thing you're avoiding. And then hire for that once you love that too. Hire once you'll miss doing the thing. And I so deeply miss editing video. It was so fun. I got really into it. And I wish I could do it more. I really do. All of this to say that by the end of 2022, it was clear that the thing that we were building was not working. So by January 2023, I had to make the actual hardest decision of my life. Way harder than quitting. I know I said quitting was the hardest earlier. I just hadn't thought it through far enough because I literally blocked this one out from my memory. I had to accept I did the startup thing wrong. I was cosplaying as a big company when I wasn't. I had hired too many people. I'd hired a support person when we had 1,000 people who had signed in and used the platform, but we had 100 recurring users that were there regularly and maybe 3 support questions a day. I had 2 engineers that were very junior, but very good, but nowhere near enough work for them to do. I had a full-time designer, which we did not need. She did an incredible job making Ping look as great as it did and giving us a very established brand really early. We didn't need any of that. Our conversion didn't meaningfully go up from when it was the crappy branding that I had with Round by T3 Tools when we moved it to Ping and had a much better website. Because the thing that was valuable wasn't how good it looked or how nice it felt. It was how well it worked and how reliable the tool was. But none of that mattered because we didn't make enough money to pay one of their salaries, much less all of them, especially after infrastructure costs, because doing the low latency video was expensive as shit. I had screwed up immensely. And Mark and I had a lot of tough conversations and decided I had to do the hard thing. I laid off the team. I did everything I could to help out. I gave them all generous severance. I helped them network and find better job opportunities. This was right before the layoff crisis, so I'm very thankful I did it when I did. If I had waited any longer, it would have been way harder for them to get gigs. I'm still friendly or close with almost everybody that was affected here. Some of them are still very good friends. I did everything I could and more to help them succeed post my mistakes, because they were very much my mistakes. It sucked. I had effectively blown $1 million paying people to pretend we were a big company. And this is why I'm so hard on the other startups that do this, because as bad as it was for us, it took me 9 months to recognize it. It was from here to here, from April to January, that I recognized and accepted this. And in particular, the realization that I wouldn't try new creator tools, even if I knew they were really useful, because I was so exhausted coming up with new ideas for content that the idea of bringing a new tool into the structure just didn't even compute in my head. And if I am not willing to try new creator tools, why would I expect a creator to be willing? That realization hit me like a fucking truck. And we decided it was time to rethink everything, to extend the runway we had, the money that we still had in the bank for as long as possible as we figured out what was next. We then started working on the next product, Webhook Thing. We had realized that I had this reach in the developer world through YouTube, and it would be foolish to not take some advantage of it, both because selling to creators is a non-starter. I'm fully convinced of that to this day. If you're building a tool that's exclusive customer base is creators and influencers, you are going to struggle immensely to even make money, much less be a scalable business. Developer tools are much easier to get people to adopt. And Webhook Thing was solving a real problem we had, which is replaying webhooks from various services like Stripe, like for us, Agora, and Ably, and all these other platforms we were integrating. Testing them locally during dev sucked because playing back those events was non-trivial. And we built Webhook Thing to be a much easier way to manage and play back events in dev. A couple people really liked it, including an employee at AWS, funny enough. But it didn't get real traction at any point. I was also doing all of my thumbnails myself still and really succeeding on YouTube and just getting more and more frustrated with the tooling around it. So I built a tool to make it slightly easier for me just because I needed it. Pic Thing. Pic Thing was meant to be a way for me to dump a bunch of photos of myself, remove the backgrounds, and use them for making thumbnails. We still use it to this day. You just dump a bunch of files, removes the backgrounds. But this version of Pic Thing, the one we're in here, is the third full from scratch rewrite on a new repo. Because what had happened that was really interesting is while we were building Pic Thing, I once again got super frustrated with the S3 setup process. So Mark and I put a bunch of time into building an abstraction on top of it that became Upload Thing. We never shipped Pic Thing because it very quickly got folded into Upload Thing. The original S3 bucket for the original Upload Thing release was named Pic Thing. Because through the building of Pic Thing, the dev tool that was missing became very clear to us, and we went all in on that. And Upload Thing was the first thing I built that got real traction in the dev world other than the T3 stack. And we were so proud. I still think to this day that Upload Thing is one of the best examples of modern DX and integrations in TypeScript full stack projects. It's significantly better than even like Vercel's Blob in terms of how well it integrates and how well it thinks about the parts that come together. And it was clear that was what we would be doing next. I went hard on Upload Thing. We got a bunch of content made about it. We had other creators making content about it too. Really proud of what we did with Upload Thing. And it made money. It didn't make a lot of money, but it did make money. At this point, it was just Mark and me. But Julius from the community, who you guys probably know from all the crazy stuff he's done with Turbo Repo and Mono Repos, as well as mostly running Create T3 app, he has started contributing to Upload Thing and getting more and more useful on the open source side. At which point, I said, screw it. We can eat some of our runway. We need Julius. And I started paying him part-time while he was in college. And now Julius is one of the most essential parts of everything that we build. That kid powers fucking everything. I didn't want to hire. I desperately didn't want to hire. But the fact that we could pay him a bit of money as he helped us out with stuff was really cool. We've paid him a lot since. He's doing quite well. And I'm really pumped that he has been as helpful throughout as he has. Even then, remember that ping capped at around 8K MRR, which is recurring revenue. Upload Thing peaked at around 5.5K. It had a much better potential long tail. But to be frank, a lot of the adoption on Upload Thing was because I was a popular YouTuber. Upload Thing is great. I still really believe in the product. I think when you compare Upload Thing to the other options that exist, the gap between Upload Thing and everything else is bigger than the gap between Ping and everything else. And I don't even say it's bigger than the gap between T3 Chat and everything else. It felt so much better, but the problem just wasn't big enough or cared about enough for it to make a big splash. But the adoption from my audience was enough that we felt like it was, and we kept pushing really hard to make it work for big businesses, to make it enterprise ready, to make bring your own bucket possible. We went ham. We rebuilt the entire way the upload process worked to make it way faster. When I say we, I mostly mean Julius. I came up with the idea, but he did all the work. Really proud of what we made with Upload Thing. It sucks that it doesn't matter. Eventually, and now we're getting quite a bit later. We got to be in like April of 2024 at this point. I am talking to creators a lot more often now. I have a ton of thoughts about like the process and the pipeline for making good content. And I was spinning up more things, not expecting any of them to make money or even be useful just because I needed them. I mean, Marker Thing, which is the tool that we use for managing all of the things I talk about on stream and exporting the CSV so I can use it to chop the topics up into the individual things I talked about. We wouldn't be able to make the videos as fast as we do without this. Really proud of what we've built with Marker Thing. Learned a bunch with this one too. This is my first big server component project. Never charged for it, and it's fully open source. We just made it because we wanted it. I made Pic Thing for real this time because I was talking to these other creators and I showed them my workflow. They were jealous of Pic Thing, so I made it for the third time because the first time became Upload Thing. The second time was my private tool. Third time was an actual monetizable thing with Stripe integrated and whatnot. And it did okay. It makes like 1 to 2K a month still. The margins are good on it too. We were still losing money. Ping, T3 Tools Inc., was still not a profitable business, especially considering that we had to pay Julius and Mark real salaries and myself a fake salary, very small one. We were still burning money. But I was surprised that Pic Thing did as well as it did, that it was making around 2K a month. That meant we didn't need to go much further to get profitable. If we could do what we did with Pic Thing, like 4 more times, the additional 8K a month on top of the like 13 we were making, like it was like 22 to 25K a month, and we'd be break even. We would no longer have to worry about dying because we ran out of money. So that became my goal. I wanted to find other things like Pic Thing that we could build to pad out our revenue and our long-term, like everything. So we didn't have to worry. We were, as YC phrases it, default alive. If we didn't grow anymore, we wouldn't go out of business. We were still grinding hard on Upload Thing at the time too. And honestly, I think Pic Thing was closer to the end of the year, if I recall. And I mostly did it because other creators wanted it badly. December 2024 comes. At this point, AI is taking over everything. Everyone's hyped on it. I'm still not super into it. I'd made the move to Cursor. I was making a lot more money on YouTube. I was doing pretty well. But I still wasn't that into AI. But a big thing happened. DeepSeek dropped their groundbreaking model, V3. Not R1, V3. V3 was super slept on because it wasn't the fastest model and it wasn't the smartest model, but it was a really good compromise between the speed, the performance, and the intelligence, and most importantly, the price. DeepSeek V3 felt like Claude, but cost under a 50th or so as much as Claude did, and it was slightly faster than Claude 3.5 was. And I was blown away with the model. There was a problem, though. The website was useless. Not like bad the same way Claude and ChatGPT were, and I hated those websites. DeepSeek V3 was hosted on a site they clearly had thrown together in a few hours at most that was just entirely broken and sucked to use. I wanted a better interface to play with DeepSeek V3, and I was really frustrated with the state of Claude and ChatGPT. I wanted something that was fast and nice and good to use. And as you can guess, I started Better Chat. The goal with Better Chat was to make a better chat app to talk to DeepSeek V3. By the time I was ready to ship Better Chat, which I built almost entirely during like the Christmas holidays where I didn't have to do support or calls or any of the other things I do, I just from like December 24th to January 1st went hard on it. Then Mark got back from his vacation for the holidays. We went even harder getting payments and everything set up and then shipped it. And it did way better than we ever would have expected. Right before we shipped, we had a couple decisions to make. Chat Thing was taken as a name, and Better Chat was a bad name. And while I was hunting, I found the domain T3 Chat available for retail price. Since we were based on V3, and I had mostly retired the T3 branding at that point, I thought it'd be funny to call it T3. So we called it T3 Chat. But another important thing happened, which is that V3 got way slower. As more people were catching on about how good V3 was, and we were all using the official APIs, it went from like 180 to 200 tokens per second down to like 60 or 70, and that felt awful to use. So I did a bunch of hunting. I got really deep on things like artificial analysis and found that 4.0 Mini on Azure was really fast. And there was one other important thing about that. Since we had went through Y Combinator, we had a bunch of crazy deals with Google Cloud, with Azure and their cloud, especially for the AI stuff, even with AWS, even though we'd burned most of the AWS credit on Upload Thing. So part of why I was building this and releasing it was, I can convert these credits we have with Azure and OpenAI and Anthropic and Google into real dollars. And I had this giant pile of Azure money to burn. So I said, screw it. We'll use Azure with 4.0 Mini as our default model, so it feels really fast and nice to use. Burn some credits, charge $8 a month for unlimited. The $8 price point was Mark's idea. It's one of the best ideas that I really think helped a ton with our success. And we dropped this on a whim. Julius was fully maintaining Upload Thing, so we could go nuts on this ourselves. And it went way bigger, way faster than we ever would have expected. I'm still not in a position to share revenue numbers because I'm holding those close because they help with investor negotiations and whatnot. But what I will say is that it took about 2 weeks for us to be making more money from T3 Chat than we were from the rest of the business combined. And very soon after, we were profitable. I never thought one product would get us there. I thought Better Chat would be one of those 5 products that made 2 to 4K a month that would come back together and in the end, make us enough money to survive. I did not think T3 Chat would so quickly trounce everything we had built combined and become one of the fastest growing companies in the Valley, much less one of the better products we'd built. I am amazed that it went as far as it did, and that when we dropped T3 Chat in January, it was received as well as it was. I've gotten way deeper into AI stuff. I was actually quite frustrated because there were all these AI influencers that made it seem really hard and complex. And it took me 2 months to get ahead of them just by reading the reports and talking to people like Simon and going deep on artificial analysis and talking to the people who made the things that I used. I feel like I got to learn so much so fast that it frustrated me how much grifting there was in the space. And that's how we got where we are today, where I can bring on Yash as our intern for the summer, where I can hire Julius full-time and do my best to get him out here, where I can fight in all these AI spaces and get flamed all the time for thinking AI is good, but also not great. It's why I can egg on companies like Anthropic and OpenAI because their UI suck. It's why a lot of you are here today. I don't know where I'm going with this one at this point, so I guess the lesson to learn is that at no point did I correctly predict what was next for us. I could only ever see what wasn't. So I tried my best to, upon acknowledging that a path was the wrong one, acknowledging that staying at Twitch was the wrong path and quitting, acknowledging that this startup was terrible for me and I could do it myself, talking to these other companies and accepting that I could do a startup when I didn't think I could, when I thought YC was the wrong choice and the people most important to me told me I was stupid. All of these things were me not predicting the future correctly. It was much more me accepting that my current path was wrong and I needed to try something else. I never thought any of the big things would be the big ones. I never thought any of the failed things would be the failed ones. But by going at it for 8 years and from YC starting to today, learning to deeply care about how the things I make are used and perceived and engaged with, caring too much about the users of the thing and what experiences they are having, just making shit that's good, that I am proud of. That was the key that got me where I am. And I don't know if you can really do that at a traditional role at a company. And I'm not trying to convince you to go start a company. I'm not trying to convince you that you need to predict the future and make a bunch of crazy bets. I'm telling you that this was not the path I ever thought would make sense for me. But by cutting off all the other paths, I somehow ended up here. And as crazy as it was, and as many mistakes as I made, and as much pain as I felt, and as much shit as I've taken, which has been a lot. I hope this video doesn't get flamed with shitty comments with me being this transparent, but it probably will be. I know how this goes. I never would have thought that 2020 Theo, super focused on the enterprise grind, climbing the ladder, making the best product for their users, would end up the YC bro, AI dude, building a product that's a chat app competing with billion-dollar companies that it is today. But you don't get here by correctly predicting things. You get here by making a bunch of stupid mistakes. And the biggest unlock for me was probably right here. When I no longer had a salary, when I no longer had a boss, most importantly, I no longer had a rival. And I hadn't realized how much that was distracting me and getting in my way. If I knew what we needed to build for our users, and some manager or PM or exec or reorg or plan was getting in the way, I would fixate on them and make them the enemy. I just couldn't stop thinking about how much better things would be if they were out of my way. And this line here is the point where that stopped, because now the only thing in my way is me. And that was the unlock that changed my life. Getting to a point where I had nobody to blame or be angry at or fixate on as the reason things can't be better. And accepting I am the one who blocks things. I am the reason things aren't as good as they could be. I am the one who makes the wrong decisions and has to suffer the consequences. And also, sadly enough, my team had to suffer as well. The worst thing I've ever had to do. But those were my mistakes. And I had to get over my desire to blame those in my way. And the only way I could do that is by getting them out of my way. That was the moment where everything changed. And in retrospect, I think success was inevitable at that point, as long as I didn't burn out or grow to hate myself. I can't believe where I'm at now, where I went from the startup hater that was grinding enterprise to investing in like a fourth of the YC batch and grinding hard on a startup with 2.5, 3 people now, and Yash with a fourth. The fact that my team is smaller than it was when I left YC. It's smaller than I was when I left the team I formed at Twitch by an order of magnitude. And we're building bigger, better, more successful things that have more users that care more. None of these paths would have made any sense to me if you laid them out to me when I started. I would have laughed at you if you told me how I would get where I am today. But I'm proud as fuck of it. And I'm proud as fuck of all the people who rode with me here, who let me do this, who trusted me to figure out how to make it work. My friends who invested on a thing that made no sense at all and waited for years for it to make any sense at all. For the community that's had my back, for each and every one of you guys hanging out in chat and watching on Twitch, and also watching this video when it's done. To my team, both for building T3 tools and for keeping this channel afloat. I didn't go into this planning to have 3 jobs, certainly not planning to be famous in our space. I just rode the fucking wave. And here the fuck I am now. So take this as you will. I got nothing else. I hope this helps somebody. At the very least, it helps me get this all off my chest. It's nice to have a reference to point at when people wonder how the hell I got here. And hopefully, people will stop assuming that I made a startup to cash out on my YouTube now, because that is not how any of this shit went. That's all I got. Let me know what you guys think. Until next time, peace, nerds.